Welcome everybody to another version of the Roxborough House Roundtables. This is a special one coordinated by Lawn Society Senior, Alejandra Conejo. She is part of the capstone class. Part of the capstone class is to advocate for something you strongly believe in, and this is part of her advocacy project. With that, I turn it to you.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for coming. Again, my name is Alejandra, and I'm the president of LASSO. And what I wanted to do for my senior capstone is collaborate with my peers and have a conversation that I feel like is very important right now and always was. So with me, I have BSU and SASA. I want to introduce them too. So it's Talia and Ivan. They're both the presidents of SASA and BSU. But yeah, if you guys wanted to say anything as well, I know this is important for you guys too.
Hi, I'm Talia. I'm the president of the Black Student Union. Thank you for having the BSU a part of this event. We also feel like this is a very important conversation to have. And especially during April, we tried to have a lot of unity with other clubs. So this was the perfect opportunity. So again, thank you.
Hi, hello everyone. My name is Ivan. I'm the president of SASA, the South Asian Students Association, and I agree with Talia that this is definitely an important conversation. And I know that Jefferson was doing Unity Week earlier in April, so I think that this is a very good conversation to kind of close out this month and also our semester. And it's definitely something that we need to hit.
Yes, so I guess we can get started. I had we have a PowerPoint to kind of show the topics. Lane, would you want me to share that or?
Sure.
Okay.
It's up to you, sure.
Okay. So give me a second. I'm gonna put the present thing. Sorry, I suck at this type of stuff. I really do.
Hopefully we don't have to become further experts in the future of this.
Here it is.
Yeah. It's showing.
Does that look okay?
All good.
Okay, should I hit present? I don't know. But yeah, so this is we kind of just want to follow this to kind of keep the conversation going a certain way and stuff. So the first thing we want to do is the introductions, obviously. Another thing we wanted to say was that this is a safe space for everybody who's participating. We're not going to be debating any issues. We are going to be talking about police brutality. We're going to be talking about hate crimes and all that stuff. And a big thing that I always want to point out was that we're not debating those things. We're allowing our peers to talk about how we feel about them. And it's not going to be any type of arguing or negativity. And if it were to come to that, I would ask them to leave the conversation politely. And yeah, so obviously if anybody's starting to feel uncomfortable or anything like that, please just communicate that so we know we're all on the same page and stuff, because I know these topics are very emotional, sensitive. So yeah. So the first thing we wanted to do was kind of talk about racism, because we feel like, that is the root of all of the issues that we see going on right now. So if anybody wants to speak up, we wanted to ask, what is racism to you? Why do you believe that it exists? Even just a definition is fine. If anybody wants to speak up.
So I'll start. I feel like racism is a systematic way of keeping a group or certain groups superior, just in a way where they get to access things that other groups cannot access for whatever reason, whether it's the way they look or, yeah, basically. I don't know if that makes sense, but.
Anybody else want to chime in? Even if it's your own experience, a personal experience, even if you feel comfortable sharing, anything like that. When did you even realize what racism was?
I'll add here. My name is Alejandra Kim. I'm a counselor at the East Falls campus at Jefferson. And I define racism as a system built upon policies, and de facto law that allows individuals of a particular race, primarily white people, to benefit at the detriment of those who are not white.
That's really good. I really like what you said.
I would also like to add to the counselor. I also think what Talia said makes a lot of sense, but I think it even gets even more complicated. I think it's a manipulated system of turning one group against another group for the benefits of another. It's been a time-honored manipulation of taking those who don't have and have them fight for the remnants among themselves, while you have those who have so much continue to have it. So it's a system more than anything else put in to keep those in power, and those out. And for various different reasons, whether it's Black, brown, gay, Jewish, whatever the heck it is, all turning against each other. So you have the power elite happily watching the battle go on as they sit in their comfort. So I think that's, my definition of it.
Thank you. Okay, so next thing. So since we kind of got that started, that was kind of the foundation that we wanted to start with. We kind of wanted to go into what microaggressions were. So if anybody wants to, again, comment, what are microaggressions? How do we stop them in their tracks? Even what would you like someone to do if you if they witnessed somebody using microaggressions towards you? This can be also a really good way to talk about things that we see in the classroom, or even faculty members. So yeah, if anybody wants to talk about that as well.
Hi, I just wanted to say something about, because my name is Ashante, and I've been working in retail for 3 years. So one of the things that I go through in the workspace, a lot of the times, my name has been an issue. It's normally when I say my name is Ashante and I'd like to be called that, it's, oh, well, do you have a nickname, or do you have something else that you want to be called by? And it's that's a big problem, because if I'm telling you a name that I refer myself as, or that I would like to be called, then that needs to be respected, not questioned.
Yes, I had a similar experience as well at my job, and I still work there. But one of my teammates, when I was working night shift, she was like, "Oh, what is your name?" When I was new, and I told her my name is Alejandra, and my name is long. I understand that, and it's long to be on the name tag too. And she was like, "Oh, do you just have a nickname I can call you? I don't want to say your name wrong." And that has been a thing my whole life. My whole life has been a thing. And I know so many other people probably sympathize with that as well. Even having names that are kind of with your ethnic background as well is a really big thing. But yeah, thank you for sharing that. I really appreciate that, because it kind of made me want to share my point. But
Yes,
anybody else?
I definitely relate to the name thing, because I get called Talia. And it's okay, Professor Lane. Yeah, it happens. And even I work at a hospital with the majority of white staff, and I have to constantly say my name is Talia, and it's it starts to bother you, because it's this is my idea, it's a part of my identity. I just wanted to be respected. That's my name. And then in addition, as far as microaggressions go, I feel particularly for me, in my experience within my education, I've probably experienced them the most in classroom settings with other peers. And I've had experiences where teachers did not address, how uncomfortable that made me, and other peers that looked like me. So I feel with microaggressions, it's very important to educate people and also hold them accountable while educating them, so that they understand this is what you did and this is why it made me feel this way. You need to understand that, this is a microaggression and you can't say that to people. So yeah.
Talia, can you give us some examples? As a faculty member, I'd like to hear specifics that you can state you've experienced, and anyone else, in the group here.
Definitely. So I can honestly say on average, being on campus probably once a semester, I experience microaggressions. And so I had one time where being a fashion design major at one point, we had to sketch like figures, like women, we had to sketch them and draw the clothes on them. And I sketched one and I wanted to make it darker skin. I wanted to make it brown skin. And the teacher told me that it was too dark, that it didn't like complement like the clothing that I was putting with it. Like basically, can you make it lighter? And like I had my peers and they looked at me like, but nobody said anything. And I was just like I was offended. And like also I was caught off guard. Usually when these things happen, you don't expect it. So it's like, what do I say? Like I want to get angry, but I know if I get angry, then I'm the angry Black girl. So it's like, okay, like I don't know what to do. So it's like that's happened after a Black student union meeting. I had a teacher come to me and say, basically questioning why Black kids are gathering and if white people were to do it, then would we be wrong? I'm like, you do what you want. Like, this is something that we need to feel supported at a PWI, but we don't feel recognized. So this is what we do to comfort and relate to each other. So, I wanted to get upset, but it was just like, it just shocked me. Like, it really did. Like, I really didn't know what to do, to be honest.
That's really disappointing to hear, honestly. Because even me personally, I don't think I've ever, from what I can recall, have experienced a microaggression at our campus. Thankfully, because I'm always with Lane, and Lane is very educated, thank God. So, like, I'm in the law and society majors. These are things we talk about all the time. But, like, I've never really thought about, like, what it was like in the other majors. So, like, thank you for sharing that, because I was honestly really unaware of that. And if anybody else is comfortable with sharing anything that they've experienced on campus as well, please feel free to do that.
I know for me, I've experienced it, especially in my education. I mean, nothing as bad as what she experienced, but for me, growing up, I remember like teachers and all these people who are older than me telling me that I speak really well. And it was weird because why wouldn't I speak well if I grew up here and I've been here as long as anyone else has? So there was no reason for them to tell me that I don't speak well or that I do speak well. It was just, that's how I spoke. And I specifically remember it. I went to a superintendent. I was having an issue in a class. So I went and I spoke to her. And as I was speaking to her about my issue, she comes out and says, "You speak really well." And it was annoying because I'm talking about an issue that I'm having and you're off thinking about something else, talking about how I speak. And it was just so frustrating because sometimes you get ignored and people like just won't listen to you.
Thank you for sharing that, Leslie. Yeah, I mean, I think even I've experienced stuff like that. Like, not, luckily I have not experienced anything like that, like in like my college life, but like definitely growing up. And I feel like people kind of also don't think about the long-term effects of like microaggressions as well. Like even my parents went as far, like my father went as far as to like only speaking to me in English when I was younger, because he didn't want me to have to go to ESOL and he didn't want me to have an accent. And even though my mom would speak to me in Spanish, he was like, no, like I'm gonna talk to you in English because I want you to have like, a good English like basis, and I don't want you to have an accent. So even just like that, like people really do like kind of ignore how much minorities alter like their lives to kind of fit in. I know a lot of people, even I think it's like the Jewish community, like a lot of them change their last names. It's little things like that people don't even think about. So if anybody wants to share something like that as well, feel free.
If I could add to the conversation about microaggressions, I think a pretty common phrase that we've heard as people of color has been for a brown person or for a Black person at the end of it's like a backhanded compliment. Like, you do this really well for a brown person, but like, why couldn't you have just stopped when you say you do this really well? There's no need almost to really include the second half of that sentence, but however, it's still a slight, and for whatever reason, it still needs to be said. And I just think that it's like very unnecessary, and I've experienced this personally. When I was in high school, I had a family consumer science teacher who told me, you wash dishes really well for a brown person. And that didn't even make sense to me. I asked her, like, I'm somewhat of a confrontational person. So I said, like, I'm sorry, like, what does that mean? Like, can you elaborate? And she said, oh, like in your country, like, don't men not have to clean? They don't have to cook. They don't have to worry about the kitchen work. And she actually made me do dishes somewhat more often in her classroom. And I just felt like that was a microaggression that may have been funny at the time. And I just kind of passed it off as, there's an old white woman who's on her way out. She's about to retire. But looking back at things like this and knowing that we were going to have this conversation, I kind of had a chance to reflect, and I thought about it. And I just thought, like, that's not okay. And those types of comments don't need to be said, and they shouldn't be said.
Yeah, definitely. I agree.
To add on to that, like, I feel like that happens a lot. It's like, I think sometimes in an effort to, I guess, be inclusive, professors kind of do start to single some students out in like, just like trying to have the conversation. But like, the thing is that you really didn't have to mention anyone's race or ethnicity. That's not what I'm here for. Like, this is where I'm like trying to talk about a building, and then you're trying to like compare like my curly hair to like someone else's straight hair. The color of my skin is slightly tanner than someone else's, and it wasn't necessary in the conversation. It never is. There's just no point in having to call out that race. And it's kind of what we were talking about earlier with just like literally the definition of racism. It's just like the system that's like trying to classify people where there really didn't really need to be a classification in the first place. And I think that's kind of what like we all kind of relate to a lot of the times. Like, we really didn't, I wasn't thinking about my race. Why were you?
Definitely, I agree. So yeah, I just wanted to skip to discussion because I know we're going to talk about hate crimes later. So, basically, how can microaggressions and unconscious biases escalate to harming other groups of people? If anybody wants to chime in, kind of how do they grow into marginalizing, people of color, and how that kind of escalates to, things that we see going on right now, like hate crimes, attacks against certain communities.
Andrew has his hand up.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Sorry, I can't see it.
Oh, it's all right. Yeah, so this is Andrew. I'm a professor in the College of Architecture and the Built Environment. Thanks for having us today and having students from across the campus here. I think listening to what students have just described, it's this slope that's very frustrating because it normalizes those microaggressions, normalize that stance, right? It normalizes that you are feeling attacked or bad at the cost of someone else. And it normalizes the social environment where it's not acknowledged. Everybody looks at each other and does nothing. And you have to, and as everyone has shared, it feels like it's incumbent upon you to either deal with it, take it, suck it up, or say something. And it normalizes that in a way that it is not incumbent upon others to point out the injustice that is happening. It is incumbent upon others to also speak up. And so it reinforces that behavior. And as things get, and then people wonder why things get out of control. And it's like, well, the tire's been flat for a while and the light was telling you that it's flat, and now it's really flat, and you're complaining that you don't have the AAA phone number. Well, you know, you've been practicing for a long time. I think it's, we have been practicing ignoring the microaggressions that occur to our students, and it has normalized our blindness, or our, and actually I don't think it's blindness. I think it's normalized our choice to be silent.
Thank you.
Yeah, Alejandra, I think we also have to understand what we've been taught. And it goes, I think I've discussed this with you and maybe some of the Lasso, but look what Rick Santorum said the other day. When the Europeans came over, there was nothing here. There was such tremendous civilization in the Americas, such advanced civilization that was here that rivals, if not bets, what was going on in Egypt and in Rome and Greece. But when we're taught young, we're taught that the white civilization was the key one. And people from Latin America, they didn't hear in the school system just how advanced these civilizations were, and the pride that you should have been getting, the community should have been getting from this, was robbed from you. And look how, just Santorum saying there was nothing here. What do you mean there was nothing here? Go look at those monuments. Go look at the pyramids. The biggest, taller than the Great Pyramid is in South America, and that was built before it. But we don't learn that. When Andrew and I went to India, you can see, because we stood out being white, they took pictures of us everywhere, the populations, because Professor Parakel was with us, who's Indian, who explained to us that because of colonization, they were taught that the white people were better than them. And that's ingrained in their culture still. After all these years, it's still there. So it's education that we keep on getting, or lack of education of what's better and what is worse. And that's unfortunately keeps going generation to generation. So that's where these microaggressions, where you said, the gentleman from the organization about washing dishes, you know, that's like ridiculous stereotypes that continue to permeate because of what we learn from movies or what we don't learn in school. And we have to learn that. We should learn that South America had amazing civilization. We should learn that the African nations were extremely powerful and rivaled Egypt at its time. We don't learn those things. And I think that we just carry that ignorance with us throughout.
Yeah, that's really true. Because even I remember in high school, like the textbooks that we had were so like outdated. Like they were talking about the same thing, still like putting Columbus up on a pedestal, like, you know, and people like they keep, you know, they just learn what they learn in school. So obviously, you know, they're gonna have those things in their mind forever. You know what I mean? Like they're like, oh yeah, you know, they didn't learn about anything that had to do with other races or anything like that. And so they just keep those type of same mentalities and they don't grow. And they kind of just like ignore anything else that they're kind of told. I don't know if anybody else wants to comment on that, on their education.
I want to follow up with that because for me, I found it surprising that, like, for instance, I can even say for like now, like some of the classes we have will address topics of like slavery, Jim Crow era, things like that. And I find that a lot of like my white peers don't talk about it. They don't want to participate and explain what happened or acknowledge it. And it feels like Black people did it to themselves and had to have to explain it and re-explain the history of our country. Like, and not even just for my group, I'm sure, you know, for other groups as well, like even the Asian Americans, Latin Americans, like we've all had these experiences, and it feels like we have to be the only one that advocates for them. when it's a shared history between all of us. And I feel like there definitely needs to be like just taking it like an accountability in a way where it helps us all move forward, because it's like I can't be the spokesperson for, you know, slavery and all, like it's our history. It's my it's your history as much as it is my history. Why do I have to be the one to be the student of choice to educate the rest of the class? And then I thought about it, maybe it's because they didn't learn these things the way I learned them. Like, and I'm grateful that my parents made sure that I knew, you know, my history, the history of America. Like, this is all of our history and it's still playing out now. So it's like we all have to really advocate for the conversations, even if they're uncomfortable. Like, it's all of our history. So yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, just kind of follow up on that. Something that I really reflected on a lot when I was going to school here too was that it was the first time that I ever learned about my own history, because the school offers like a Latin, they just started offering a Latin American class. And I was like, yeah, I'm definitely gonna take it. And it was really the first time I ever learned about my own history. And I'm an American, I was born here, you know what I mean? So I grew up learning about European history like that. Like I took a world history class and it was literally about like European history. Like it wasn't about anything else. Like I never learned anything. And I felt so, like part of me felt like it was my fault. I was like, maybe I need to educate myself, you know what I mean? Like, but it's really not our responsibility, because I feel like people need to stop thinking that American history is just European history, because it's not. America is filled with so many different races, ethnicities. At this point, you know, we need to start considering like, what is American? You know what I mean? It's not just Europeans, it's everybody. And I feel like a really big solution to a lot of the problems that we're having is if we started to implement these things into our education system now. You know what I mean? Because kids are raised in school. That's where they, you know, they learn how to become, you know, citizens and everything, like, you know, just functioning citizens in society by like what they learn in school, but by what they learn like from their peers and like their teachers. So I just felt like that would be a really big solution to a lot of the problems that we have right now. And it just, obviously, I felt a huge amount of guilt when I didn't know my own history. And then I'm like 21 years old last year, like just learning about like, you know, my own stuff. It was just really, it was like a really big like point of reflection for myself. But yeah, if anybody else has anything to say, feel free, or we can like move on.
Professor Harnish has a question.
Go ahead.
Yeah, hey everybody. Sorry I was running a bit late here, so I'll take a second to introduce myself as well. I'm Chris Harnish. I'm an associate professor of architecture in the architecture program. Andrew and I see a lot of each other. And I am also the co-chair of the CABE Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. I'm also icing a very sore shoulder, so that's a nice hack. Yeah, I'm also the co-chair of the CABE Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee, which is the result of a multi-year push, and finally got approved by the Provost's office to be part of a standing committee in January. So that's the long self-introduction. And actually, you know, I think this issue, you raised two really great points. One is academic curriculum and just how far off it is and how far curricula needs to evolve. It's shocking how slow when we really look back on it. But also the point about who does the work. And you know, I just think it was Baldwin that had that whole discussion that said, you know, it's not the underrepresented people who are obliged to fix this problem. Like, you know, I think it is a broad cultural issue that needs to evolve. And so I just really concur with the points you just made.
Thank you for commenting. Anybody else? Or do you want to move?
Hi, my name is Sanjana and I'm the treasurer of SASA. I just wanted to share one of my friend's recent personal experience. My friend is of Chinese descent and her family, they were going to New York City. They were helping their dog out of the car. And a white lady actually approached my friend's mom and was like, go back to your country. You're the reason this whole thing started. And I'm guessing she was referring to the COVID situation that was going on. And the mom ignored her. And my friend, she was bold enough and she was like, I'm actually from New Jersey. I don't know why you think I'm from another country. Like, I was born here. And after she said that, the lady walked away. And I just think it's so unfortunate that these assumptions or generalizations are being made and so easily being said out of people's mouths. Anti-Asian attacks actually have been so prevalent. And I didn't know this until I took an American or Asian American studies class last year. I was pretty much like unaware of all the hate that was going on, the crimes, until I took that class. And going off of what Alejandra said, like, education in this is so important because for the longest time I was pretty oblivious to this. And I also read a recent article that said that there was a 169% surge in hate crimes for Asian people. And it's just mind-boggling how there's a normalization of this. And also one other point that I wanted to bring out is that my friend was actually telling me how after she's made that comment to the lady, her mom was like, why did you say anything to her? You should have just stayed quiet. And I think there needs to be a conversation of how, like, you know, there's this whole model minority and like how Asian people are perceived as like calm, quiet. They don't really like put themselves out there in terms of like protests and all of that. And I think it was just pretty interesting how like the mentality is that we should be calm and like not, you know, have our voices heard.
Thank you for sharing that. So if nobody else has anything to say, we can move to the next topic that we kind of wanted to cover, which was police brutality. This is a big thing that has been going on recently, obviously from what we've seen from the Derek Chauvin verdict and everything like that. And I just wanted to point out, because it's just, I feel like some people have the misconception that because he was found guilty, like this problem is over. And it's just very far from over. And as you can see, I kind of, I wanted to point out how before, you know, the case was even over, during the case, like people were still getting killed. You know what I mean? Like Adam Toledo, like I'm just gonna read this real quick. You know, 7 hours before prosecutors opened their case against Derek Chauvin, a Chicago officer shot and killed Adam Toledo, a 13-year-old boy who turned around with his hands up. April 11th. April 11th, Dante Wright was killed by a police officer who mistook her gun for a taser. Ma'Khia Bryant, a 15-year-old girl who was killed by police days ago, since testimony began on March 29th. And at least 64 people have died at the hands of law enforcement nationwide, with Black and Latino people representing more than half of the dead. As of Saturday, the average was more than 3 killings a day. So as we can see, the problem is very far from over. And hopefully the Derek Chauvin case kind of sets an example for what needs to continue happening. More people need to be held accountable for their actions. So if anybody wants to speak, it's open to anybody who wants to comment, any feelings, everything is acceptable right now.
Professor Lane, were you about to say something?
No, I'll go for you, Talia. Go ahead.
Okay. I just honestly feel like it's, for me as a Black woman, it scares me just because it's like constantly seeing these videos of people that look like me, of other Black and brown people, of Asian people being attacked. It just feels like we don't have any value. Like, it just feels like we're just dogs in the street that can just get killed and be lucky if it's even acknowledged that someone killed us unrightfully. Like, it makes me feel like I could just walk outside today and get killed by a cop and everything will go, like, there'd be a outrage for, I say, a week, maybe 2 if I'm lucky, and then it's just back to normal. Like, it's just, it happened, moving on, then someone else after me, then someone else after that person. It's just like the fact that it's such a normal thing now, like, and people are so desensitized and removed from what's actually happened to actual human beings. Like, it's serious, and it's like, it's scary at how normal this is now. Like, and seeing these 3 incidents here showed me that, like, this can really be anybody. Like, I have brothers, I have, you know what I mean? Like, we all do. We have family that we care about, and to see these kids, to see it just lets me know, like, nobody's off limits. Like, and if it happens to you, then so be it. It happens to you. And there's no real shock of, like, oh my gosh, this just happened to this human being. Let's get together. Let's do something about it. Like, life just goes on. Like, and it hurts. Like, I don't understand why. Like, I just don't.
Thank you for commenting.
What I was going to say before Talia said what she said, it really ties in. When you saw his face, Chauvin's face, when he had his knee on his neck, it says, you talked about not caring. That was the worst part of something really, really bad. Okay? There was a man dying, asking for help, and for, was it 9.5 minutes, right? He never just looked down at this man and said, "Are you okay?" I mean, that's all he needed to do to save his life. And it was the absolute, and you said it so well, Talia, the lack of caring, that he wasn't a human being. I think if it was a dog, he'd have more caring. And that to me was the most frightening thing, was his face and the total impassiveness of it. And the crowd was yelling. You heard the crowd, we all saw the video. And he didn't care about that either. That to me is the most frightening part that we have to address. What has led to that unbelievable callousness towards the life of another human being. And it's so profound. Because I forgot who said it, worse than hate is indifference. And that's the most dangerous emotion. So I don't know what to say about that, other than that it made me physically ill. Alejandra, Ashante has a hand up.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I just wanted to say, I really appreciate that this roundtable is being held, and that we are being able to express and talk about how we feel about everything that's been happening, because this has been very hard, like, for Black students, and I know Asian students, students of color. Like, we are still continuing to do our work, be in school, get assignments done while all of this is happening. And some of us, like myself, like, I've been actively going to rallies. I'm a spoken word artist, so I've been speaking at these events some days, and then later on I'm going to class, and I'm trying to focus and put my attention towards schoolwork, while the back of my mind, like, not even the back of my mind, the rest of my mind is like, my people are literally getting killed out here just because of the color of our skin, and this system that has been designed and created to put us in these places where we are less than, we are lower than white people. It's a very difficult time. And I'm also a little disappointed that we didn't have more spaces like this, because I feel like out of, like, this whole semester, this has, for me personally, this has been a space where I feel like I can actually talk about and be heard about how everything that's happening has affected me, and being a college student and as a Black woman. So I just wanted to say
I really do appreciate this space.
Thank you. If anybody else wants to say anything.
I have, this is Andrew. I'm gonna apologize ahead of time. Ashante.
It's Ashante. You had it right the first
Ashante.
time.
Okay.
Yes.
Ashante. Thank you for saying that, because in private conversations with students, I've heard that so many times.
Mhm.
Where is the space where I can say this? Who is the person I can talk to? And as you were saying, at our institution, knowing who it is that you can approach and say this, and work through this with, right? I mean, we're a learning community. We're built on discourse. And if that discourse can't happen, we cannot be a learning community. And the discourse definitely needs to be about the shared environment that you and I have. And you need to be able to feel like you can bring these up, because quite frankly, and I say this to my students, is that I learn as much about architecture from them as I have to teach them, and really about everything. And so it troubles me that students want to speak and don't know where to speak, because that is, for me, that's an essential quality of this space that we have. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for saying that. I really appreciate that, just because I feel like maybe I wish we would have done something like this sooner. And I was telling Lane when I first came up with the idea for this, was that like we've never really done anything with all of the like multicultural groups on campus. Like sometimes we would collaborate with like one, like, you know, for like an event, like as, you know, just like a regular event or anything like that. But I really do hope that like this will kind of set the pace for like next semester. I know I won't be here, Talia won't be here, but hopefully, you know, like you guys can continue to come together, because it seems like it's really important for students of color, minorities, to just have somewhere to go. And I feel like they should be able to come to all of the cultural organizations on campus. But yeah, so I hopefully this continues to happen. And I'm really glad to hear that you guys want to continue to have like a space like this. So if anybody else wants to say anything before we move on to the next question. Okay, so the next thing we were going to talk about was, are body cams really effective? Should releasing body cam footage be optional for police? Any opinions or anything like that?
So I posed this question just because I just read an article about another police shooting, and a judge granted that the video not be released. If I could pull up the article,
Yeah.
I can. It was on my, like, as soon as I opened my search engine, it was like right there. So I clicked it. It might have went somewhere else, but basically, there was an incident. If I wish I had it so that I could give you more information on it. But basically, just me seeing that, like, police have the option to, like, if something's being questioned, like, the fact that they have the option to release or not release the footage, I feel like is kind of problematic. And also, I don't feel that, okay, somebody just put up.
Yeah, it's the
Yeah,
North Carolina case. Yep.
yes, thank you. Yeah, so we'll just put that in. Bryce just put the link in the chat. But yeah, that I felt a way about that. So that's why I posed the question.
So it's Dean Henry here. Talia, you actually hit on something I was talking about with my children actually last night. Every state has a different rule about how body cameras can be used and not used and publicly shown. And I was almost wondering why, when their government is trying to make federal standards for certain, for all police departments across the United States, why they don't have a clear policy that applies to camera footage for all police departments, or FBI or federal marshals, or any organization that is in charge of enforcing federal or state policies, that everyone follows the same policy. I get you don't want to hinder investigations. I get that you don't want to presuppose anybody guilty or innocent on either side of the camera. But again, I think that there needs to be some standards so that everybody knows what to expect when an incident happens and evidence comes forward, when people can and cannot see it, so that it isn't like people are feeling like someone's hiding behind a law, but it's more transparency of what the law really is.
I'd like to address just two things, because this is going really fast this hour. I can't believe how fast it's going. I think it's a great idea that every semester that we have a roundtable from the Roxborough House roundtables every semester featuring the presidents or boards of all of the campus organizations dealing with whatever it may be. I know Dean Humphreys, who's a common presence at our roundtables, would love to come if he could. And I think this is something we should establish. I would just say I've noticed from Jefferson a strong top-down. There's a lot of speakers and they're really interesting, and that's nice. But I think we got a bottom up too, and that's you guys. And you guys are the ones who can tell us, how to make things better. And as presidents of your organizations or board members, you're obviously respected on campus. So it would be, I pledge that we'll do that once a semester at least, that we'll feature it. And this way to give this open forum so that we're bringing, Henry Humphreys is here, so he's hearing it. And I would also like for you folks here today to tell us what to tell our bosses. What do you want?
Mm-hmm.
What do you think is not being done right? Because we can sit around and talk about how terrible things are. We all know it. We read the newspapers. What we do is, how do we make it better? How do we make this university better? So I would just love to hear from you guys. What do we tell the people above? How do we fix things?
I'd second that, Evan. And I would also say that you have to, including people like me, tell them that they have to sit and listen, not sit and talk, so that you all get the chance to actually tell them what's going on.
I agree. Just because I feel like we don't really have that much time left, I feel like I know we wanted to talk about hate crimes, and I feel like we kind of touched on it a little bit. And if anybody else has anything they would like to talk about regarding hate crimes or anything like that, you can interrupt me. But I did want to, let me check the chat real quick. Adrian said, other clubs receive all kinds of funding because they are so closely linked with the school. Most of our events used to be fundraised or us begging for funding. I kind of agree with that. A lot of people kind of ask me, they're like, oh, like, does LAXO get money from the school, whatever? No, none of the student organizations get money from the school. And it kind of creates an issue when we want to do, events that like educate our members and stuff like that, because we have to fundraise. And an issue that we have with that now is that we're not even allowed to have meetings in person. So like how are we supposed to fundraise? So, I mean, that could be a separate conversation if, you guys would like to talk to, faculty regarding if there was any possible way that we can get funding for cultural organizations on campus so that we can hold more informational events for our members, and maybe even have, guest speakers, like, people who can actually educate faculty as well, since you guys are asking what you guys want to be able to tell your students.
Alejandra, not to interrupt, you aren't able to get money from CAB or SGA like other organizations can?
From what I know from previously is that it's like a loan. So like they expect us to pay them back whatever we kind of bought.
Thank you. You just gave me a good action point. Thank you.
So yeah, that aside, just because I feel we only have a couple of minutes left. If anybody wants
Can I say something? Sorry.
Yes, go ahead.
Sorry, I put that in the group chat, but yeah, I just want to say that I think that it's very great that we've been doing this. And I'm glad that Dean Humphrey's here, but this is like only like a one-step thing. Like I think that if we want to do something real, like it shouldn't just be like once at the end of the semester. Like it should be like a monthly thing, something that something where it feels like we actually are being listened to, where it's not just like put at the end of the month or like a once a semester type thing. I know that like it's really hard to make events and stuff, but it's even harder to do without funding or trying to figure out how to come up with money if it's like at the end of the day basically being loaned out to us. So I think that like
I think we got a Wi-Fi problem.
Oh,
Adrian's back. Adrian, you got cut off. Finish what you were saying.
My bad. Can you hear me still?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, yeah. If we want to be represented evenly with other clubs, like having a similar funding to others is like a great start, because then we're not like a step behind other clubs because of lack of funding, or because we have to create another event to make the money to make that event. You know what I mean?
Unfortunately, Adrian, you made your point, and it's a good one. It's unfortunate since you have bad Wi-Fi. It's too bad.
We heard what you said, though, Adrian. If anybody else from any other clubs wants to like interject and say anything, I agree. I mean, I'm leaving, so I can't really say much, but I do agree.
Alejandra, just really quick. I proposed this some time ago, and I'm going to propose it again. I think Adrian's absolutely right. It shouldn't be once a semester you guys get together. I really think there should be a sort of a UN of the different organizations that come together to discuss all of their needs, wants, and problems, and then present that formally through some sort of system you guys put together, be your thing, to people above. The roundtables are good, but we need actionable things. And some sort of legislative body, like you would sit there with Talia and Shantae, and the people would sit together from the different organizations who say, listen, this is the problems we're having on campus, this is what we need addressed, and then forward that up. What would you think of that idea?
I think that's a really great idea. And if Leslie is still here and listening, Talia, I forgot who you said. You said John is going to be your president next year.
Yeah, and I can forward him that information.
So, I mean, the president's taking over next semester. I would love for them to kind of come up with something like that. I wish that I could take part in that. And even if you guys need my help over the summer, like I am very open to you guys. So just let me know. But yeah, I definitely agree, Lane, and I hope Leslie and John will be able to kind of get that going.
Yeah, I definitely agree with what you're saying. Talia, if you could send me their contact information, I'm going to do that immediately, because this definitely needs to be done.
Absolutely, I can do that.
Thank you. I know we're ending at 1:30, right, Lane? So if anybody wants to have any closing statements or anything like that, it could even have to do with solutions. You know, obviously I put some stuff up that we didn't really get to talk about, but kind of, you know, in social media, or maybe ways that we can spread awareness in community. Obviously, we just talked about how we were gonna start a UN type thing for our student organization. So that's a solution right there within itself. Just any ways to create positive change, or like be allies to one another, how to advocate, you know, if anybody has anything they'd like to say in closing remarks.
Alejandra, it's Dean Henry again, just real quick, because you said this a couple times, and I know Talia has said it to me before. Just because you're graduating doesn't mean you should walk away from the Jefferson community, not walk away. You shouldn't feel like you don't have a voice in this community. There have been some previous student leaders who have stayed around to help mentor and lead the up and coming student leaders. I think it is essential for these cultural organizations to be able to have that for the continuity, and also for us to all know you're not all going away. It's like, oh, they graduated, they're not around anymore. It's a new group we have to worry about. I think that continuity is essential to helping you to continue to have strong organizations.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I will definitely be, I am actually going to be going to law school in Miami. So I won't be physically here, but you guys can always reach out to me and I will always try to, help you guys out. And Lane knows I love to mentor people. So like, that's a really big thing for me. So if anybody feels like they need, support, I love giving it. And yeah, so I know Talia is also, going to be open to helping you guys out as well. But yeah, anybody else want to say anything before we have to go?
I'd similarly say, please don't hesitate to reach out to the CABE DEI committee. Your voice is always welcome.
Thank you. Something in the chat. Thank you.
All the best wishes for law school. That's what that said.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Then I'll thank everyone. Alejandra, I want to thank you so much for this beginning. Okay, this will be a conversation from the UN we're creating, and the roundtables we'll have every semester, hopefully bringing together the heads of the families. It'll be like the heads of the big families coming together. This was terrific. Thank you so much for spearheading this and bringing everyone together. And thank you everyone for coming.
Thank you guys for
Thank
coming.
you.
Have a nice day.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, guys.